Against the Minnesota Vikings, the Chicago Bears offense was getting back to some of its old bad habits. Not sticking with the running game when it's working well. Not picking up blitzes and properly protecting the quarterback. Not getting DJ Moore involved. Then Justin Fields got hurt, and everything went out the window.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. On the show today, we look at a bad Bears loss to the Minnesota Vikings, only made worse by a Justin Fields dislocated right thumb. As I'm recording this, we don't know the full extent to which that will keep him out, but that's obviously the big long-term takeaway from this game. But I want to look at what was happening even before his injury, where this offense seemed to be reverting back to some of its old ways and struggling in a lot of different ways, not just Fields himself. I also want to look at Tyson Bagent, who came in, gave you some hope there, an encouraging touchdown drive and a follow-up comeback drive that ultimately ends with an ugly interception. And I always like to wrap up our Monday after a loss podcasts with finding some positives. And I don't think people are talking enough about a pretty good, dare I say, or a good enough defensive performance in this game, really keeping the Minnesota Vikings offense largely under wraps, albeit without Justin Jefferson, but still got to give them credit when they actually do so. But the Bears offense is the bigger concern right now, given Fields' injury situation and really their inability to consistently move the ball and score in this game. You know, after back-to-back weeks of the offense looking great for at least 3 quarters against the Denver Broncos and Washington Commanders, we wondered, has this offense turned a corner, or were they just playing 2 really bad defenses or really poorly coached defenses in Denver and Washington? And what would happen when they start to play a defense that's coached a lot better, like one Brian Flores? And I think we saw the answer to that question was, oh no, that was just bad Commanders and bad Broncos, not all of a sudden Bears have totally turned a corner. Because even before Justin Fields' injury, we saw, heck, on the opening drive of the game, 2 sacks where the blitz gets through and he gets an unblocked pass rusher getting right in his face. And then a couple plays later, sacked again on that drive and getting into a long down and distance. And like that was the story early in the season, certainly against the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, who blitzed quite a bit. But we saw, as a result, Fields not having that same confidence and decisiveness that we saw him bring against the Broncos and the Commanders, right? Where he was firing these throws with anticipation and really seeing the play develop before it does and trusting his receiver and getting DJ Moore involved. And I don't think it's purely Justin Fields' fault that DJ Moore had like 1 catch in the whole first half. But I do think we didn't see the same level of Fields in the first half. And I didn't think the offensive play calling and game planning was helping Fields and the offense all that much either. It felt like Luke Getsy getting back to a lot of his earlier struggles and bad habits of what this offense looked like. You know, we saw throughout the course of this game, Dante Foreman was running the ball pretty well. There were certainly ups and downs, but for the most part, the Bears were getting what they wanted on the ground game. Darrington Evans, too, would come in and rush well. I mean, they finished with Foreman had 4.3 yards a carry. Evans had 3.6. They combined for almost 100-yard rushing between the two of them. When you add in Velus Jones out of the backfield, the running backs, people at the running back position did get 100 yards rushing. Like, the Bears ran the ball well in this game. And it felt like, once again, they got away from it far too often. A lot of the passing early and often, and sometimes they'd remember to run the ball. They ran it like 3 or 4 straight plays during the course of this game, and then would get away from it, and then Fields would get sacked because, again, they couldn't properly pick up blitzes. You had a mini bye week coming off of the Thursday night game against the Commanders. You had 10 days to prepare for what we all knew the Minnesota Vikings were going to do. This was not a new defensive game plan. They didn't throw a bunch of wrinkles at the Chicago Bears, and yet they still felt like they largely weren't ready. They didn't have answers at all times. They didn't have hot routes when they needed to. Or when the Vikings didn't blitz, they couldn't get anybody open, right? It was like the Vikings were always one step ahead. They'd show blitz, the Bears would change for the blitz, they'd drop 8, and then no one's open, and Fields takes a sack. Or they wouldn't show blitz, they'd bring blitz, but Bears don't have it picked up, and Fields takes a sack. I mean, it's just stuff like that that gets you very frustrated about this team. And, of course, there was a series in the second half. We'll get to it with Bagent in a little bit, but on Luke Getsy, they ran a bubble screen to Darnell Mooney, picked up like 7 yards, and then ran a bubble screen to DJ Moore that was blown up, and then ran the same bubble screen to the other side back to Darnell Mooney. 3 straight plays, essentially the same screen play call. They were all RPOs, so there's an option to run, but still back-to-back plays all being the same type of slot wide receiver screen. It's just stuff like that that's so frustrating around Fields, in addition to Fields himself, hesitant to take these deep shots, checking things down and not really doing a lot. I mean, I don't blame him for the interception where the ball popped 20 yards up in the air and then it was just a jump ball there. Like I don't see that as like a bad decision from Fields. It just wasn't the same like confident, decisive, aggressive, high-level quarterbacking from Fields against this defense that we saw against the Commanders and the Vikings before that. Then he gets hurt. Then the thumb is dislocated. Apparently they popped it back in and he tried to get back out there, but anytime the thumb becomes dislocated, then the bone is pushing in and pushing on tendons and other muscles in there. So the MRI is going to determine if there's any ligament damage and stuff in there. Usually it's, from what I understand, there's usually some. It's just a matter of like, how much will that impede him from continuing to play the quarterback spot? Will it be, if those are damaged, will it just hurt too much? Will he be able to have enough strength to grip the ball? Because he was trying to grip the ball during the game while injured and couldn't get back out there because he couldn't get enough grip strength there. So that might suggest he might not be ready to go next week against the Las Vegas Raiders. But we'll see exactly how long Fields may be out from here. But however long he's out, it's going to be the Tyson Bagent show moving forward. And he did show us some fun there. Some nice plays, some downfield passing. The offense felt like it opened up a little bit more once Tyson Bagent went in the game. But I'm hesitant to think that he's going to unlock a new Bears offense that they weren't getting with Justin Fields. Beyond just, of course, the interception and the strip sack and the mistakes Bagent did make in this game. I think there's also aspects of what happens when a young quarterback comes in that might work well when he's thrown into the fire against a team that wasn't preparing for him, but becomes a little bit different in his first start, his second start, and beyond there. So we'll look at what Bagent did in this game and what the next couple of games might look like if Tyson Bagent has to be the starter next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime is the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. Not just sports, but you can get Bears games tickets, and I'm sure if Justin Fields is going to be out a couple weeks, those prices are going to come down a little bit, and you can always find a great deal for Bears games on Gametime. But you can also get live music, comedy shows, concerts, theater events, everything near you with last-minute killer deals, all in pricing, so you're not getting surprised with fees, and you can even see the views from your seat. So they got a best price guarantee that makes sure they are going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love it just as a way to see what's going on around me. Instead of having to go to each venue's website to see, okay, who's coming here later this month, or who's coming there later this month, it's all in one place, and it's easy to then just buy the tickets right there and have that peace of mind that knows I'm getting the best price for my ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the better way to do daily fantasy sports, because PrizePicks puts you in complete control of whether or not you're going to win or lose. Unlike other daily fantasy platforms where you're setting up your lineup and you're trying to compete against 1,000 other people and just happen to have the 1 in 1,000 best lineup that what everybody else picked, PrizePicks says no. we're going to let you decide whether or not you win or lose by just trying to guess how a player is going to perform. PrizePicks sets projections, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards for each player. And you decide whether that player will get more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if you nail your picks, you can get up to 25 times your money. It's super easy. You can literally make your picks in 60 seconds or less, not just on your favorite Bears players, but across all of football, all of basketball, I guess the rest of the baseball playoffs. You can still get some of those in there. The hockey season starting up and more with our friends at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's an extra $100 to play with at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Tyson Bagent's first NFL action was certainly not made easy, thrown into the fire a little bit in the middle of a game to make his debut, and came out certainly didn't start the way he would have wanted to start with, the strip sack going back in for a touchdown. It was, I guess, his third play. Did have a completed pass in his first play, so I guess the first start was where he wanted to, but that first drive ends in a disaster, and it's 7 points going the other way, and all of a sudden in a game that you felt like you were right in it, down 12-6 at halftime, it becomes 19-6, and it's a little bit more digging out to do. But in some ways, like, as much as that sucks for Bagent, maybe it takes a little bit of the pressure off when you say, okay, well, we're down 2 scores now. Anything we can do at this point is gravy at this point. And that should have been the mindset coming in, right? When your starting quarterback, who your whole offense is built around, gets injured, and an undrafted rookie free agent comes in, even if we're excited about Tyson Bagent, it's kind of just whatever you can get is gravy at that point, because you're not expecting a rookie undrafted free agent quarterback to come in and actually lead a great comeback drive. But, slowly but surely, the Bears drove down in the fourth quarter there and got all the way down to the goal line, and Bagent took the QB sneak up the middle and scored for his first career touchdown, and Bears were down 6 with about 8 minutes left in the game, and you're like, okay, Bagent's settled in a little bit. It's hit DJ Moore on a couple of really nice plays there, and of course Moore got hurt because some of those balls really kind of left him out to dry, but made a nice rolling away scramble adjustment for play where Tyler Scott came out of nowhere, running back onto the screen and dove for a pass. Like, Bagent was cooking a little bit, and they got back to running the ball a little bit more up to that point when they got Bagent going a little bit after that drive. But then, of course, driving down at the end, takes that deep shot to DJ Moore and was picked off at inside the 10. And I was kind of waiting for an explanation on that interception to be like, oh, pressure in his face, he was off balance, or maybe, he got hit or something. But he said after the game, no, I just underthrew it. That's on me. I just didn't dial that one up correctly. I didn't put enough under it and really needed to throw that one farther. Like, it was just purely a bad throw. They had DJ Moore one-on-one going vertical. Moore had a step on him. And if you can lead him, it might be a touchdown throw, but instead it's badly, horribly underthrown. And it kind of highlights, I think, the ups and downs of throwing an undrafted rookie free agent quarterback in there. I want to give a shout out to a friend of the show, Kyle Popovich. He texted me right after that. He's like, this feels like the Caleb Haney experience, right? Where backup quarterback comes in and he's young and a fresh face, and he's a very different style of quarterback than your starter. Going from big cannon arm downfield passer Jay Cutler or big cannon arm downfield passer Justin Fields. Obviously, a lot of differences between Fields and Cutler, but bear with me, right? Like, those are not the same style of quarterbacks as like Haney or Bagent that are much more quick decision, 3-step drop, get rid of it, anticipate it, and try and be smart with the football. Again, Haney and Bagent aren't exactly one-to-one either, but it's the contrast of quarterbacking from the Field style to the Bagent style, or the Cutler style to the Haney style, which are not the same, but it's an analogy, not a perfect one. And Bagent comes in, it's like, he's getting rid of the ball quicker, and he throws with more anticipation. Like, these are things that Bagent does perhaps better than, or just differently than, Justin Fields. And I think this is an offensive system with Luke Getsy that is tailored a little bit more to that style of quarterback, which is an indictment of the offensive coordinator for not making a system that's more tailored to Justin Fields. But regardless, Bagent can come in and throw some nice quick curl routes, some nice quick slant routes, and make quicker decisions with the ball with the blitz coming, and it starts to work a little bit here. Until it doesn't, right? Until he gets strip sacked in the pocket because he doesn't have 2 hands on the ball, and because he's not flushing out quickly enough, because the speed of the regular season is a lot faster than the speed of the preseason that he had gotten his other action in. And of course, trying to get on the same page with DJ Moore, throwing a deep ball in a live game, a little bit different when there's a real pressure coming on and it's a real opponent that's blitzing you and all that stuff, and he massively underthrows it. And it's like, that's where you're reminded again, like, yes, there are some things about Bagent that he does that are fun and exciting, get you excited, and he could still be a very good quarterback someday, but like, you're going to hit those warts too of an undrafted guy trying to figure it out. And hey, there is a reason this guy went undrafted. And so I think if you're moving forward with Bagent, likely for at least this week against the Raiders, I mean, we still need a prognosis on Fields, but at this point, it doesn't seem like it's a good sign for Fields to be able to play this week. I think what you're going to see is more of this kind of thing where it's like he'll get into a rhythm, and he gets into a rhythm, I think, quicker than Fields does, and can kind of, chunk your way down the field well, and you'll be excited about him, and then you're going to see some of those mistakes. And I think as he plays more and more, defenses are going to pick up on the things that he does and take advantage of him as an undrafted quarterback. For example, he stares down a lot of receivers. If you watch Tyson Bagent, they're quicker throws, so it's a little bit harder to take advantage of the stare down, but teams are going to start realizing, like, hey, this guy's not necessarily looking us off with his eyes, right? He's going to tell you where the play is going to go, and that's going to get you in trouble at some point. And I think he's going to then have to adjust, right? So I think we're still going to see some more ups from Bagent. Like, we're still going to see some of these moments, and maybe it's a full game against the Raiders because Jimmy Garoppolo's hurt, went to the hospital today, after his game. So, like, I could even see Bagent beating the Raiders, but I don't think even if Bagent starts putting together some better performances, there's going to be a point where defenses start to catch up to him, and then he's going to have to catch back up to them. And that's going to be an up and down process to where there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be more interceptions. There's going to be more strip sacks in that way. Like, there's going to be those examples of times when Bagent looks great and times when Bagent looks less than great. And it'll be interesting to see how well he can kind of ride the highs and lows and the waves of whatever's going to happen over the next, few games, or whatever his replacement time for Justin Fields is going to be. A big way to help him certainly would be to get healthier on offense, get your running backs back, get your offensive linemen back, which, again, the Cody Whitehair benching is a big story that we won't have time to talk about today, but need to get into at some point, probably on tomorrow's podcast. But also, the defense needs to generate some turnovers and play well to help the offense do their side of complementary football and put the offense in a position to try and win some of these games. And I felt like they did against the Minnesota Vikings. It's never a perfect defensive performance, but the defense kind of did their job. They were vulnerable at times, but did a lot of good things in this game. And I think it's important to recognize the defense as a real positive coming out of this one. Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Let's say your team's in need of another quarterback because someone's injured, and you may have to go look out for somebody else. You want to make sure that you're getting your eyes on the best possible candidates so that you can make sure that you're getting the people that are going to be best for your team. Maybe it's not a quarterback per se, but it's your equivalent of a new backup quarterback. Every single job is important because you never know when they're going to be out on the field or out in the workplace for you. So LinkedIn is going to give you a great pool of candidates to work with millions of people on LinkedIn, including myself. And then simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Lost in the much more important storylines of Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent, and of course, feeling bad about the loss and just feeling bad about the team in general, being back to their poor playing ways, particularly on offense, was a defensive performance that, the fumble return for a touchdown makes you forget they held the Vikings to 12 points. The defense held them to 1 touchdown and 2 field goals, plus Rasheem Green with a blocked PAT. So, 12 points is a winning defensive performance. You should be able to expect in the NFL that if your defense only allows 12 points, you should be able to win that game every single time. If your offense can't outscore 12 points from your opponent, your offense is bad, and that's where the Bears are right now. And of course, the Bears offense scored 13, but the Bears offense also gave up 7 points via the fumble recovery. So that's why the math makes you feel worse about this game. You see 19-13. It's like, okay, well, that's not a stellar defensive performance, but it kind of, again, stellar's too strong of a word, but they got the job done. They absolutely shut down the Minnesota Vikings running game. They averaged 2.1 yards per carry as a team, and their lead running back, Alexander Madison, had 18 carries for 44 yards, 2.4 yards per carry. The team did not have a run longer than 8 yards in this game. They were really swarming downhill to the ball. And I think that was perhaps, I mean, I guess it's always intentional, but more from a game plan standpoint, right? I think they wanted to make sure that the Vikings were not going to beat them with the running game. You got no Justin Jefferson out there. Make sure it's not just running the ball and controlling the clock all game against you. Make them other receivers in their passing game without their best weapon. Make them be the ones that have to beat you. And they sort of did. I mean, Addison had a couple of nice catches and a touchdown. Hockenson had a couple of nice catches. Like, they moved the ball all right in the passing game, but like Kirk Cousins had under 200 yards, still had a 93.6 passer rating, but like 21 completions for 181 yards and 1 touchdown. Like, that's not exactly Kirk Cousins lighting them up. Like, what works so well for this defense is that it seemed like almost every drive, the Vikings would start out with a running play and it would go for a loss or nothing. And so the Bears kept swarming the run so well that they would get into 2nd and long and 3rd and long, or 2nd and long to 3rd and medium, and then they could sit back in their soft zone coverages that Eberflus runs, and for the most part, keep the play in front of them, step up and make the tackle. It's 4th and short, and the Vikings punt. Like, that was kind of the defensive formula here, was really, I was going to say sell out against the run. It wasn't even all that much selling out. It was like, Justin Jones getting in the backfield for a big tackle for loss. DeMarcus Walker, Andrew Billings, Jack Sanborn. I mean, the linebackers were definitely being aggressive. And as a result, there were times when Kirk Cousins was able to find open receivers behind them. And sometimes they moved the ball way too easily, especially on that last drive in the first half, in the 2-minute drill. Cousins kind of dink and dunk, and then a couple chunk plays in there to Hockenson, and really it was a lot of Hockenson on that drive to get all the way down, and then finish in the end zone on a pass to Addison that was a little bit too easy right up the seam. But like, for them, other than that drive, they kept the Vikings out of the end zone every single time. Plus, you had a great, I guess technically on the stat sheet, I think it went down as a strip sack by TJ Edwards that was intercepted by Tremaine Edmonds. That play was ruled a fumble recovery on the official stat sheet. That Edmonds dove for it and seemingly caught it out of the air. That was ruled a fumble recovery and not an interception on the NFL's official stat sheet game book for that one. I thought, I mean, there was no need to like review it, I guess, but sure looked to me like A, Cousins' arm was going forward, and B, Tremaine Edmonds made a legitimate clean interception on that play. So it goes down as a fumble recovery, not a pick on his stat sheet. So when you look back on the season, you wonder why he didn't have as many interceptions, but still, like, that was a great individual turnover generating play from him. You saw Jaquan Brisker be involved on a forced fumble in there. And of course, there was the backwards lateral pass that TJ Edwards definitely recovered inbounds, but apparently his toe being over the sideline out of bounds is enough to say he was out of bounds and didn't have possession. So somehow that doesn't count as a turnover, but you were getting close to turn. I mean, you did get some turnovers and you almost had an extra turnover. Like, the defense was generating some things there. The pass rush was maybe still a little underwhelming. They didn't get to Kirk Cousins a ton, but they did enough to put him in long down and distance situations with how good they stopped the run that it wasn't horrible in that regard. Like, for the most part, these guys held up fine. And I think there's some credit there to, these linebackers getting a little bit more comfortable attacking downhill. This defensive line, I think they matched up well physically with the Vikings offensive line in terms of being able to generate more of that like strength and power, that pure raw strength with bigger guys like Andrew Billings and Walker that are, I think, just a little bit, I don't want to say oversized for their position, but just, bigger, physical, strong type guys, not as much of the speed type of linemen on this Bears defensive line, at least, outside of Ngakoue. So, they were able to set that line of scrimmage back a few yards and then allow the linebackers to play aggressive downhill and scrape over the top and deliver some big hits and be in the right position and also just tackling better too. That, Alexander Madison is not a dynamic, game-changing, make a bunch of guys miss tackles kind of running back. He's average, he's all right, but not very good. So, he wasn't going to be able to take advantage of the Bears and go like individually, like Herculean effort to create a running game on his own, even when his offensive line maybe wasn't doing a great job for him up front there. So to me, like, that really made for a nice formula in this game where you didn't have Justin Jefferson as kind of the like bail you out option. Like, it's Kirk Cousins working with a bunch of other receivers that are not dynamic athletes or dynamic playmakers, and a running back that's not a dynamic playmaker. So it's like what Hawkinson can give you, and then occasionally finding some lapses in your coverage in the back end. But that was only good for 12 offensive points by the Vikings. Check that box for this defense. Pretty good. And next week against the Raiders, potentially without Jimmy Garoppolo, could be another opportunity for this defense to check another one of those boxes and do their job against Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell would be the Raiders' quarterback options there. I mean, yeah, they still got Devontae Adams and Austin Hooper playing well for them and Josh Jacobs in the backfield. There's talent on the Raiders' offense, but quarterback-wise, in theory, you should have a slightly better matchup there if Garoppolo is unable to go. So some momentum for this Bears defense, even if the offense is definitely heading in the wrong direction. And we can take that away as a positive from otherwise an ugly Bears loss that feels like we're kind of right back where we started, at least offensively. I'm curious to go back through the All-22 film and look at what went wrong with the Bears offensive line against the blitz and what we saw a little bit more closely from Tyson Bagent as well. So we'll have to go through some of that stuff on tomorrow's podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. We also got to talk about Lucas Patrick going in for Cody Whitehair and the explanation from Matt Eberflus. Not satisfactory at all. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Feels like some BS if you're asking me, but we'll get into that in tomorrow's podcast as well. Just make sure we're your first listen each and every day to get your daily Bears fix. We love our everydayers that tune in to Locked On Bears 5 days a week because we're here for you every day. That's why we do the podcast, is for you to tune in every day and to make sure that we always leave you with an opportunity to bear down.